Revenge with Karen.
It started with the email subject line, transitioning legacy processes. That's how you knew some bullshit was about to land in your lap wrapped in management speak gift wrap. I clicked it while microwaving leftover pad thai at 10:02 a.m., still wearing fuzzy socks and my I redline contracts for sport hoodie. Inside, just one sentence from Connor. Let's touch base streamlining compliance bottlenecks, Ashley CC'd. Translation, don't know what you do, but I'm about to ruin it anyway. Connor had been back for 3 weeks, back from Wharton or Yale or some other ivy-covered ego farm. You'd think the founder's only son would ease into things, shadow a few calls, maybe take notes, but no. First day, he changed his LinkedIn title to Acting VP of Strategy. Second day, he made a Notion board titled Legacy Audit Purge. Day 3, asked me to make him a coffee during a Zoom with legal. I wasn't even in the room. He pinged me over Slack like I was a barista who moonlighted as the only person certified to manage a $290 million escrow account. But that's where I lived, behind the curtain. Redlining contracts, drafting deal memos, making sure the transfer of funds didn't turn into transfer to prison. I wasn't flashy, no flair. Just a woman with 2 monitors, compliance badge, and receipts going back 4 years. The founder used to call me his insurance policy. Not in a cute way, in a she knows how not to get us indicted way. I didn't chase recognition. My thrills were quiet, spotting a duplicate clause at 11:48 p.m. on a Friday, updating a counterparty risk chart during a storm while half the office panicked about power outages. I liked being the calm in the chaos, one person who actually knew where every version of the agreement was buried and how the signature sequences locked into place. Hey, by the way, if you've made it this far, do us a tiny favor. Hit subscribe and drop a like. Seriously, 95% of y'all listen without subscribing, and the team's been living off gas station coffee and blind hope. That one click helps more than you know. All right, back to the chaos. So yeah, Connor didn't like legacy systems. Translation, he didn't like anything that existed before his password did. He wanted dashboards, arable integrations, real-time synergy. I wanted to slap him with a wet copy of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, but I digress. The first signs came in quietly. Access requests I hadn't approved, file names being renamed with stupid emojis, a shared folder called ASH Retired with a question mark. Real subtle. Then came the team meetings. He'd jump in before I could speak, smile into the camera, and say things like, Ashley's been amazing at documentation stuff, but we're pivoting to a more aggressive ops model. Translation, you're dead weight and I'm too cowardly to say it. The founder, well, he wasn't as present lately. Health stuff, or maybe just tired. I used to meet with him weekly, then biweekly. Then maybe Connor can loop you in. That's how the rot spreads, not in explosions, and slowly missed meetings and polite CCs. Still, I did my job, precisely. Every fund release tied to dual auth sign-off, every clause timestamped, every compliance trail ironclad. Because even if Connor didn't know what escrow meant, and let's be clear, he once called it that bank freeze thingy, I did. And I made sure it couldn't be tampered with by accident or arrogance. There was one moment, though, that stuck. He stormed into a call with legal one day, was presenting on access controls, and he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, we need less Ashley, more agility. The general counsel coughed. Someone muted, I smiled. Because I knew something Connor didn't. My initials, they weren't just on the policy drafts. They were on the protocol itself. In the one place that counted, right under the section titled, Termination of Signatory Rights Dual Path Exception. He hadn't read that part, but I had. I'd written it. Connor's war on legacy clutter hit like a slow-motion car crash. Not one big impact, just 1,000 tiny indignities spread across a Google Calendar. First went the facilities team, then procurement, then 3 paralegals who'd been there longer than the company's logo. One Friday, he posted a reorg flowchart in Slack with a gif of fireworks. My department apparently now fell under strategic ops, which meant I reported directly to him. Let me paint the picture. I'd spent 4 years reporting to legal. Not legalish, not legal adjacent, but full-on regulatory counsel, with weekly briefings, audit check-ins, quarterly risk reviews. I didn't just know the law, I'd memorized the weird quirks of the regulators themselves, which ones hated passive voice, which ones needed physical binders mailed to some office in Virginia like it was 1998. It was embedded in the bones of the compliance structure. And now, I was answering to Connor, whose biggest professional achievement was a Medium article on disruption culture. The transition call was a masterclass in fake politeness. He smiled through his teeth and said, "We're excited to bring more strategy to compliance." Then he looked at me, full Zoom eye contact, and added, "Ashley's been great at, paperwork, but we need someone who can think bigger." Paperwork. Paperwork. Paperwork was the reason half their deals didn't end up in litigation. That paperwork held the master terms, the indemnification clauses, the escrow release chains. But I didn't say a word. Just nodded, closed the Zoom, and reread Clause 4.3 of the Acquisition Transfer Protocol for the 17th time that week. Next came the disappearances. I stopped getting calendar invites. Meeting links broke when I clicked them. The Slack channels I built, once titled #compliance triggers and #contract flags, were quietly archived. IT pinged me about user role review. Suddenly, I couldn't edit the escrow tracker doc I'd authored. Just view only. I forwarded the changelog to legal. No response. Humiliation came in doses. One time, Connor presented my own slide deck to the board and called it new strategic thinking. I recognized the formatting. It still had my footer, Ashley v. Draft 2.6. He didn't even crop it out. Just read my lines like karaoke lyrics and took a victory lap. I started documenting everything, not out of spite, out of survival. Every locked file, every permission shift, every weird forwarded message. I had a folder called If I Disappear. It wasn't a joke. It was insurance. Because when someone like Connor rises too fast, they don't check the foundation. They assume it's permanent. What he didn't realize was that I was the foundation. And he was trying to demo the load-bearing beam because it didn't match his aesthetic. The final straw was a team sync where he introduced a compliance modernization lead, a guy named Brennan, who looked like he ordered iced matcha lattes and wrote Synergy in cursive. Brennan smiled like a substitute teacher trying to earn cool points and said, pivoting from Ashley's style of process-heavy governance to something more agile. My style. Like I'd been decorating cakes, not maintaining federal compliance on a $290 million deal. I muted myself, took a sip of cold coffee, and opened the one document that hadn't been touched, Transfer Protocol Final PDF. My initials still sat on the cover page, stamped in the corner like a signature carved in stone. Hadn't noticed that document. Not yet. Too busy playing Empire. Too busy deleting me from the meeting room while I quietly backed up everything they didn't understand. So I waited, said nothing. Watched every digital door close one by one, and kept one key in my hand. Because Connor, he wasn't building a new future. He was building a trap, and he didn't even know he'd already walked into it. It came in a calendar invite. Subject line, Transition Planning Ashley V. No greeting, no context. Just a 30-minute meeting slot with HR and a note. Connor has requested documentation handoff and role clarity. Role clarity, that's rich. HR, of course, opened the meeting like she was reading from a hostage letter. Ashley, first of all, I want to thank you for your contributions. Red flag number 1. Then came the soft threat wrapped in fake kindness. This isn't a termination, just a shift in focus. We're asking everyone to be flexible. Connor's vision involves consolidating operational roles under a single strategy vertical. I sat there staring at my keyboard, counting to 10. She kept going. He's asked that you prepare a brief transition outline. High level, tools, contacts, key docs, anything Brennan might need to ramp quickly. I almost laughed. Brennan? The guy who asked me what a holdback clause was during last week's call. Guy who thought double signatory protocol meant you just emailed someone a second time for good measure. I didn't answer. I just said, sure, I'll prepare something. Then I ended the call, exhaled slowly, and opened a new folder on my desktop. Not transition materials, no. This one I called Failsafe Personal Copy. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being methodical. That's what they never understood. There's a rhythm to betrayal in corporate life. The isolation, quiet erasure, the way your name starts disappearing from threads, and your calendar fills with optional meetings you're not invited to. But I didn't plan to go quietly. Not without a record. Not when the only thing holding their biggest deal together was my signature. On every escrow control document, they now thought they could just transition. I checked in with legal, or tried to. No reply. Just a single thumbs-up emoji on Slack from one of the junior associates. Not even a message, just a thumb. I used to meet with the general counsel twice a week. Now I couldn't even get a sentence. And the founder, radio silence. Once upon a time, he'd pull me into his office and ask, "Can you walk me through that risk memo again?" Not like a lawyer, like a human. Now I was lucky to get a blanket reply from his EA saying Connor will handle. Connor will handle. That's when I realized they'd already made their decision. Wasn't being sidelined. I was being boxed up, so I dug in. I went line by line through the transfer protocol final document, refreshed myself on every clause I had written with legal 3 years ago. Section 2.4, termination of escrow control must follow procedural notification with dual signatory reversal. Section 3.1, access revocation by any unauthorized party nullifies transactional chain. And my favorite, Section 5.7, buried near the bottom in tiny font. In the event of noncompliance, disbursement halts pending recertification by original co-signatory. That was me. I wasn't just a compliance manager. I was the second key in the lockbox. Without my validation, escrow release was frozen. Indefinitely. Still, part of me wanted to walk. Let them burn. Let Brennan explain to the investors why release was delayed, because he deleted the woman holding the final approval. But I didn't. Not yet. I was angry. I was humiliated. But more than anything, I was necessary, and no one seemed to realize it yet. So I stayed quiet. And I stayed in. I started screenshotting Slack threads, downloaded metadata from my shared folders, backed up version histories from contracts they thought were dead and buried. I wasn't hoarding out of spite. I was preserving a truth they were too arrogant to see, that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one they assume is already gone. Connor didn't just underestimate me. He erased me. And erasing the escrow co-signatory, well, that wasn't just dumb. It was a breach. The call invite hit my inbox at 7:48 a.m. sharp. Subject, Q4 funding alignment live session W/board plus strategic ops. No prior warning. No prep. Just a live investor sync with every person who mattered. Connor hadn't mentioned it. Brennan hadn't briefed me. But my name was in the CC line, so I clicked accept and made my coffee black and mean. The Zoom room was already packed when I joined. Connor was mid-spiel, doing his usual thing, buzzwords stacked like Jenga blocks. Alignment, velocity, next phase leverage. The investors nodded politely, their cameras on but eyes somewhere else. Brennan sat with his chin propped up on one fist like he was posing for a stock photo, and then I saw it. In the top right corner of the shared screen, a new file appeared. No one said a word. It just blinked into existence like an omen. Termination Ashley VPDF. For half a second, I thought it was a mistake. An internal draft accidentally opened. The founder's name popped up in the from field. Not his assistant, not legal, him. Connor clicked into it like he was unveiling a marketing deck. A short letter filled the screen. No greeting, no context. Effective immediately, Ashley V will no longer be part of the strategic operations function. Her responsibilities will be transitioned under Brennan M, effective this week. We thank her for her service. That was it. No compliance manager. No deal architect. No mention of the $290 million deal she personally stitched together from shredded timelines and regulatory minefields. Just a one-line wipeout, like I was a typo in an old spreadsheet. And then the worst part, no voice. No one said anything. Connor didn't read the letter aloud. Brennan didn't look up. Not even a thanks again, Ashley from the peanut gallery. They just let it sit there, silent and humiliating, in front of the full board and 6 external funders. Digital erasure. Live, I didn't flinch, didn't ask for the floor, didn't unmute. I just sat there with my camera off, the blue ring around my initials glowing faintly in the corner of the call. And I opened a folder on my desktop. Transfer protocol final. No panic, no tears. Just the kind of cold, razor focus that comes when someone finally pushes too far. The document opened like a locked vault. Everything I'd drafted with legal, time-stamped, signed, countersigned, and baked into our system like concrete. Every rule they thought was just red tape. That was my tripwire. Every clause they'd skimmed over with MBA arrogance. That was my landmine. Clause 2.2, signatory transitions must be acknowledged in writing by both parties. Failure to comply renders transfer invalid. Clause 4.5, in the event of unauthorized role reassignment, escrow control remains with the last verified holder until board ratification. Clause 6.1, attempted unilateral revocation of access during an active release cycle constitutes protocol breach. And there it was. They hadn't fired me. They'd breached escrow. I moved with surgical calm. located the current deal packet, located the distribution list from the last board audit, located the clause sheet, and then I pulled up a new email. No drama, no subject line in all caps. Just to board distribution list, subject, per protocol, attachment, transfer protocol, final PDF. I hovered my finger over the trackpad. Connor was still talking, now pivoting to capital resilience like he hadn't just broadcast a live firing with zero compliance oversight. And I clicked send. One email, no fanfare, no revenge monologue, just a document. And the clock started ticking. Second the email left my outbox, I muted the call, turned off my camera, and leaned back in my chair. No dramatic exhale, no trembling hands, just silence and the faint mechanical hum of the office humidifier clicking on in the corner. Then I opened the PDF again, this time not as the author, not as the creator, but as a forensic witness. I read it like I didn't know what it said, like I hadn't spent 3 years shaping it with legal line by line. My cursor hovered over the metadata tab. I clicked. Timestamp, exact. Editor, Ashley V. Last modified 4 months ago. Approver, General Counsel, exec copy. And then the digital signature log. There it was. Each key clause embedded with my login ID, hashed and verified through our internal control system. Every major approval had required my countersignature and two-factor authentication. Not because I was paranoid, because I knew someone like Connor would come along eventually. Someone who thought rules were just rubber bands meant to be stretched until they snapped. But what sealed it, what turned this from a gotcha moment into a corporate Molotov cocktail, was Clause 7.4 in the active escrow agreement. I hadn't looked at it in months, but I remembered it. The phrasing had been mine: unilateral access change or attempt to alter signatory structure without dual acknowledgement renders the escrow release chain invalid and subject to full recertification by the original architect. There it was, plain English. They hadn't just fired me. They triggered a system-level lockdown, one that no amount of damage control could sweep under a rug. I switched back to my inbox. The call was still happening in another window, Connor rambling about phase transitions and stakeholder optimism. I didn't even hear the words anymore, just background static. I drafted one more email. To Investor Sync at Companitimingcom CC, Founder, Legal, Strategic Ops, Board Ops Subject, per protocol attachment, Transfer Protocol Final PDF Body. Please refer to Section 7.4. Compliance verification pending. No flare. No signature block, just the quiet tap of my finger on send. I didn't wait for confirmation. I already knew what was coming. The email thread for the investor call wasn't just passive observers. It included 2 of our federal compliance liaisons, the external counsel from Donnelly Finch LLP, and crucially, the founder, who, until now, hadn't spoken to me in almost a month. He'd see the file, and the file would speak louder than I ever could. Back on Zoom, the chat pinged once, twice, then 6 times in a row, messages scrolling like a stock ticker. Questions, red flags. One investor, someone I recognized from our last quarterly summit, typed publicly, "Can someone verify the signatory override clause?" We were told escrow control had been transitioned. Connor didn't flinch immediately. I could see him processing, head tilting, like someone trying to read a menu in a language they lied about knowing. Then legal counsel unmuted. "I'm going to need 5 minutes," she said, her tone flat, focused, no frills. Another ping. This one from the founder's private Zoom window. He joined, no introduction, no small talk. He just appeared, pale, backlit, reading something on a second monitor. The PDF, Connor blinked. "Hey Dad, just looping you in." The founder didn't look up, and I stayed muted, camera off, keyboard silent. My part was done. This wasn't a scream. This wasn't revenge show. This was a scalpel cut to the jugular of a $290 million deal, executed not with emotion, but with procedure. The kind of move no one sees coming, because they're too busy assuming the quiet woman in the corner doesn't know how sharp her own knife is. 5 minutes. That's how long it took for the temperature in the Zoom room to drop below freezing. Long enough for every executive to read the PDF, short enough that no one had time to prepare their face. The founder joined again, this time not through his EA's calendar or some assistant's bridge line. No, this was his account, full video, unmuted. He sat in his study, the same bookcase behind him that used to show up on quarterly earnings calls, but now slightly off-kilter. There was a glass in his hand. Water, maybe, maybe not. He didn't say a word. Connor kept talking like he hadn't noticed. The fire alarm hadn't gone off. So, just to circle back, we're targeting a Q4 liquidity event with minimal operational drag. And that's what I think makes this structure appealing: agility, optionality. Legal counsel cut him off with a calmness that made my stomach clench. Connor, pause. He froze, glanced down, probably scanning Slack for someone to rescue him. She looked straight at her camera, eyes hard. No performative concern, no manufactured sympathy. Just a woman who knew she was suddenly center stage. I'm looking at the metadata trail in the attached protocol file. It's been verified through the compliance archive. The access sequence shows Ashley's credentials on every step of the release mechanism, every phase of the transaction. Connor swallowed. Okay, but we transitioned that, right? We implemented the Brennan framework. She didn't even blink. You don't transition escrow with a framework. Transition with a dual-signed authorization memo. There's no such memo. He tried to pivot. Look, the spirit of the transaction was always about operational streamlining, the spirit of the transaction. She repeated, cutting him off again. You executed a signatory displacement using your father's email account. That's not a transition. That's a breach. Connor's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The founder hadn't moved. His eyes hadn't left the screen. He was reading, still maybe rereading. Then Legal turned her head slightly to him and only to him and asked the question that cracked the floorboards. Sir, who signed away the escrow? No one spoke. She clarified, her initials are everywhere. If this was a legitimate transition, we would see a co-signed release letter. Instead, we have unilateral access change originating from your account. A new voice joined, an investor. Wait, is the money secure? Then another. Is this going to delay release? And another. Was there a compliance breach? It was like the boardroom equivalent of windshield wipers failing in a thunderstorm. Everyone trying to stay calm while realizing they were already hydroplaning off the road. Connor looked to his dad. We were aligning the chain. Brennan's system, stop, the founder said. Just that, one word, like a gavel. He still hadn't looked at Connor. Legal tried to soften it. Need to pause any further steps until we assess the escrow chain integrity. Which was polite corporate speak for, nobody's getting a damn dollar until we figure out who just took a blowtorch to the legal foundation. My inbox was lighting up. Slack too, notifications flying across my screen like tracer rounds. But I didn't touch a thing. I just watched. Camera off, mic muted, coffee slowly cooling on the desk. This wasn't my scene anymore. It was the ghost in the system. The forgotten name in the footer that turned out to be the author of everything. And now, they were all reading my words like a prophecy they'd ignored for too long. The founder finally spoke again, eyes still fixed somewhere just below his webcam. Where is she now? Legal didn't answer. No one did, because I was already gone, and I'd taken the chain of custody with me. The founder's screen went black. No goodbye, no we'll regroup, no polite executive wrap-up. Just the abrupt click of a man realizing too late he'd let his legacy fall into the hands of a boy who thought PowerPoint was the same as power. Connor froze, eyes darting like a man trying to find the exit in a burning house. Except every door led to me, or rather, to the document I just detonated across their entire investor pipeline. And then, the real panic started. Slack exploded. Need clarification on the escrow breach ASAP. Is this isolated or systemic? Can someone confirm the compliance officer's status on file? Was the release conditional? Who had final authority? Connor tried to salvage it. Started talking again, voice higher now. Everyone take a breath. This is just procedural friction. A misunderstanding, but nobody was listening. Because Legal's camera had turned off. She was no longer in the call, probably on the phone with their outside counsel, or the federal auditors, or maybe just pouring a shot of something strong before filing an incident report that would haunt her for months. Then it happened. One of the junior partners, Tyler, the one who always called me ma'am like it was a nickname, whispered in a private Slack channel we'd once shared during diligence. Did he impersonate his father's email? I didn't reply, but I saw the message, and I knew what came next, because it wasn't just unethical. It was criminal. Digital impersonation of a corporate officer during a binding transaction. That's not a misstep. That's a landmine with jail time glitter poured on top. Another ping, this time from HR. HR 9:56 a.m. Ashley, we're asking for professionalism right now. Please don't escalate this further. We're happy to talk about options. Options. Like I was still interested in negotiation. I hadn't already watched them rewrite my job title, delete my access, and broadcast my termination like a halftime commercial. I didn't reply. I clicked the message, marked it as read, closed Slack entirely. Because HR doesn't get to call for professionalism after they let a frat tier power grab derail a $290M transaction and tried to smooth it over with a damn wellness stipend and a pink slip. Emails were flying now, investors looping in risk analysts, counsel bringing in third-party audit contacts. Someone from procurement dropped a message in the investor chat asking, "Does this affect supplier timelines?" Connor went gray. He stopped talking entirely, just stared at his screen like it had betrayed him too. One investor, the sharp one from the Singapore fund, unmuted and said flatly, "We will pause capital deployment until escrow authority is verified and validated." Full stop. That was the moment I knew. The deal, his deal, was dying in real time, suffocating not from scandal, but from process. From the boring, meticulous procedures he'd mocked, deleted, and overwritten with mood boards and Slack emojis. The exact things I'd built. The chain of custody wasn't broken by accident. It was shattered by ego, and the only person who could glue it back together had been removed like a stain on a carpet. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, even reach for my phone. I just sat at my desk, in the same hoodie I'd been wearing when Connor first CC'd me on my own funeral, watching it all burn, one compliance clause at a time. Vengeful clarity, they call it, when the mind sharpens to a single point. No rage, no panic, just purpose. I wasn't escalating anything. I had already delivered the final blow. Now I just watched the dominoes fall. At 10:11 a.m., Eagle vanished from the call entirely. A moment later, a mass calendar hold went out to the board, labeled Escrow Integrity Urgent Closed Door. No notes, no agenda, just a 45-minute block, read as a siren starting immediately. The call I was still technically on, silent now. Investor cameras blinked out one by one. No one wanted to be the last to leave a digital crime scene. Except Connor. He lingered, blinking, frozen, jaw tight like he was chewing the inside of his cheek raw. And I sat in the background, invisible but present, just another muted square on a now-doomed investor call, watching the CEO's son try to keep from drowning in a storm of his own making. Inside 10 minutes, the fallout hit full speed. The fund from Zurich, the one with the most to lose, replied all on the investor chain with just one sentence. Until escrow is verified and recertified, halting all capital movement. Not reviewing, not delaying, halting. The kind of word that sounds like a gavel. By 10:30, the founder himself sent a private message request to my inbox. First time in 6 weeks. Subject, "Can we talk?" Body, "Ashley, I didn't know about the letter. Please, let's speak off record." I read it twice. Once as the employee who used to admire him. Then again as the woman he allowed to be erased, live, without a word of protest. I didn't reply, just clicked archive. He hadn't known. That's what they always say after the bomb goes off. Nobody ever knows until the fire's already licking at their nameplate. 10 minutes later, another ping from Connor, this time in the investor thread. A clumsy, last-ditch attempt to rewrite the narrative. Please note, the compliance structure is under active review. Ashley's removal was part of a planned transition aligned with our modernization strategy. Modernization, like accidentally severing the release chain of a federal-grade escrow account, was part of a design. One investor, a partner from the Texas syndicate, blunt and brutal, responded, "Your strategy just tripped a clause that halts fund disbursement until recertified by the removed party. She's the protocol." The founder's email icon grayed out a moment later, logged off, either rage quitting or prepping for the war room. Then came the final nail. Legal had remained silent since vanishing into the board huddle, returned to the thread, and dropped one line that sealed everything. For clarity, per Section 7.4 of the agreement, escrow certification cannot proceed without sign-off from the original compliance co-signatory. As of this morning, that individual is no longer employed. No apology, no spin, just law. Connor tried one last move. A private message pinged my inbox, full of shaky confidence. "Connor, 10:42 a.m., this isn't on me. You could have transitioned clean, you wanted this drama." I stared at it for a second, then clicked open the version history on the transfer protocol document. 42 edits, all clean, all compliant, all with my name on them. I closed the message. No response. Let him talk to his reflection. I was no longer part of the machine, but I was still holding the key that powered it. Now the board knew it. The investors knew it. Even legal, once quiet, had finally said the thing out loud. Without Ashley, there was no deal, no fallback signer, no reset button, just a black hole where certainty used to be. Connor could point fingers all day, but legal wasn't buying it. The board wasn't buying it, and I sure as hell wasn't picking up the phone. This wasn't collapse. This was detonation, and I wasn't beneath the rubble. I was holding the detonator. Internal memo hit inboxes at 11:17 a.m. sharp. No formatting, no preamble, just a plain text email from legal titled, Subject, Escrow Breach Analysis Transfer Chain Verification. It was cold. Surgical, the kind of thing written when everyone's already lost their appetite. Line by line, timestamp by timestamp, it documented every single action tied to the escrow account. Login credentials, access attempts, approval workflows, signature logs, download activity. Each entry carried the same initials, AV, Ashley V, Ashley V, Ashley V. Her presence was everywhere, not in a ghostly, ominous way, but in the clean, mechanical footprint of someone who had built the dam system and knew how to make it purr. Then came the turn. Connor's name appeared. Once. 10:39 p.m., escrow transfer request override submitted via founder email, no validation. The red flag was immediate. Founder's account was flagged as non-primary IP address with no corresponding dual-auth code on record. The system hadn't blocked it because Connor had forcibly downgraded Ashley's permissions the day prior, breaking the fail-safe loop. And there it was. Section 7.4 breach event triggered. Clause activated. Any breach of access chain nullifies disbursement. Signatory must validate reversal. And the signatory terminated. Memo didn't say who was to blame. It didn't need to. Connor's digital fingerprints were smeared across the breach like a toddler caught red-handed with a Sharpie. Within minutes, reply threads popped up. Do we have recourse? Can the signatory be re-engaged? Is this actionable criminal impersonation? Why was protocol allowed to lapse? But Ashley, she was gone. No response. No out-of-office message, just a dormant account and a trail of signatures as crisp and final as a judge's gavel. One investor camera flicked back on during the unraveling, then another, and another. They all looked the same, tight-lipped, leaning back, watching Connor like he was a dead fish starting to smell. The founder rejoined briefly, his eyes sunken, a legal pad clutched in one hand like it could somehow protect him from what was already carved into the server logs. Legal leaned toward her camera and spoke without ceremony. You let him fire the lockbox. Silence. The founder's mouth twitched. He said nothing, just sat there staring at the memo like it was a tombstone. His fingers trembled, flipping back and forth between the clauses as if one might disappear if he just blinked hard enough. It didn't. It never would. Across town, on a third-floor balcony overlooking a quiet street, Ashley sipped lukewarm coffee and closed her laptop. A new message blinked on her screen. From Board Ops at Rikston Kapitalcom subject. Advisory offer escrow recovery and protocol redevelopment. She didn't open it. Didn't even hover her mouse over the preview. Let them wait. Let them sweat. She leaned back, let the sun hit her face, and smiled, not big, not triumphant. Just enough to taste the satisfaction that comes when your silence speaks louder than every executive on the payroll. She didn't need to say a word. She was the word. And the last thing they saw before the money froze was the one thing they couldn't delete. AV, etched into every safeguard they never understood until it was too late. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.